Pamela Gold.
Melanie Curtis, another fabulous. I have to tell you, Jesse was like, wait. How long do you record those for? This is my 9-year-old now.
Yeah.
45 minutes. He's like, you can't make them more than 10 minutes. No one's going to stay and watch that long. I was like, it's Jess. So, and I know that's true and something for us to think about and people to give us feedback on. We can edit things down or whatever, but you and I love our conversation. So it's like, this is as much for me, I feel like. And then if people do listen to the whole thing, great. And if people give us feedback that they want them shorter, we can do that too.
Yeah, I think this is a different style of thing we're creating. It's a long.
Yeah, it's like a podcast. It's really more like a video podcast. So
yeah.
I told my 9-year-old, he's like, okay, well, we have our hair down and we're ready to go.
So and it's ready perfect to go.
This week we're talking about discipline. And I pretty much always, if I'm home, like if you see this background, I do this right after working out usually because that's our timing.
I love that.
That's part of my daily discipline is that no matter what, I work out every day. Even if it's not as great of a workout as some days I work out. Yeah,
I was thinking to talk about the concept of discipline. It's just a huge, valuable. By the way, can you hear that beeping? By the way, any chance you can hear that?
Barely.
Cool. So if I just keep talking and never take a breath, it'll be totally fine.
Is that what's going on?
No, I'm always sensitive to noise for these.
I don't think it'll mess anything up.
I was thinking of these things, for example, us doing this. It's super easy to not do. The thing with discipline is that it implies that we're trying to make a change, that we're trying to either earn a new habit or make some kind of life change that is different than what we're used to doing. And so I made a video about this a while ago, like a shorter sort of talking head video, and it was well received because there's so much content out there that I feel like discipline is a super relevant concept for now in this social media age where everyone is promoting that the easiness of what you can do or the following of your dreams. And listen, I'm all about inspirational shit. I'm all for it. I believe it. I'm 100% on board. I just think what's missed and what's often not talked about is how hard it actually is sometimes to make those changes. And I'm not saying to take that on as a mindset, oh, it's got to be hard. It's got to be hard. Because sometimes it feels totally easy, but that's not where discipline comes into play. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, to me, discipline is about willpower, right? And not to shift it or hijack it, but when I think about discipline, why is discipline hard, right? Why is it hard to do the things that we know we want to be doing to achieve our goals? That's a question of willpower. And there's so much great research now. I love the time and place, the age that we're in, because there's so much hard science around this topic. There's Kelly McGonigal in Stanford, she wrote an amazing book and she's done so much research, and there's a bunch of other people too. But there's just so much now that we know that may even be counterintuitive about how we go about, building our willpower, having discipline in our lives. And it's cool because the more we understand it, the more we can hack it, right? The more we'll be like, okay, I'm aware of what's going on here, and this is what I need to be doing to shift. So starting with a conversation around discipline, to me, it's all right, well, how do we get more discipline? And that to me is a question of, okay, how do we have more willpower in our life? And what is that really? Because willpower, what is willpower? It's another one of our fabulous topics of this abstract thing that you can't see it, you can't touch it, but we know it's there, we know it's real. Mm-hmm. And now there's all this great research around it.
Tell me more about that. What are you talking about? Because willpower was on my list to discuss as part of intimately connected to discipline, although not exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Well, so to me, it's how do you have discipline in your life? Habits. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Habits. How do we instill habits? And the thing about willpower is that we only have a certain amount of it any day, any given day, right? Exactly. So you start the day and it's kind of like your cell phone, you're on 5 bars. And then as you go through the course of the day, you use it. and
Correct.
you get worn down. So by the end of the day, science shows us, research shows us that that's when we have the least amount of willpower, right?
Okay.
AKA, like that then translates into having less discipline
Yeah.
around what we want to do. And another way of looking at it is like, well, when does it matter? Like, when is it even hard? And it's science also shows us that it's whenever we have any contradictory kind of core beliefs. Like
Yes.
if you look at like having a snack,
Yes.
do I want to have a banana as a snack, or do I want to have a candy bar as a snack? There's part of my brain that wants a candy bar because it's delicious.
Yep.
And then there's part of my brain that was like, no, I have long-term goals. And I know that having a banana is going to move me in the direction of those long-term goals.
Yes.
So willpower or discipline comes into effect or comes into play when we have these contradictory kind of parts of our brain, parts of our mindsets, right? And if we hack that, right, that's how we start to be like, okay, there's all this opportunity now to do work around this. And there's so much research again around how you can start to shift this, build the willpower, and get rid of the mindsets that aren't of service. So like both are important.
Yeah, I feel like these are all separate things that go into discipline. That's the way I look at it, is that like for willpower, for example, is something that we use to actually execute the discipline. Like, for example, you're talking about the physiology, like how do we actually employ discipline? So this is the thing, why is discipline, what is it? Like theoretically, when we have a habit, say it's, or a physiological pull or a mindset old pull, you know what I mean? Like those things like pull us. So it's either like either the physiological pull or the emotional pull based on a mindset or a old pain point or whatever it is that's making us or driving us to that old habit. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the old habit, we're good at that. We're really good at the old habit. So we have all of those sort of entrenched things. So it makes sense that building a new habit and building a new, or making a change, you know, I'm saying sort of general things, but like even mindset, making a mindset change, like as we talk about neuroplasticity and the science behind that, is that like, it makes sense that it would be difficult or feel not right. Like, oh, that's not me. So, I mean, that's the thing, that's the weirdness or the like difficulty in wrapping our mind around how to make a mindset change and use discipline to employ these sort of default or practicing the default shift of our mindset, which is tough. So how do we do that? We make a plan. We have to plan ahead because we'll have those moments where we're breaking down. You ever heard of the HALT, H-A-L-T? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Those are those moments, right, where we're at our most weak, you know, where we're at our most vulnerable, as it were, to going back to the old habit. So theoretically, we're looking at, and this is, again, I'm sort of thinking of it from a, like, I'm here and I want to be here. Or I am skilled at this and I would like to be, or I'm not skilled at this and I'd like to be skilled at this. Or I think this way about this thing, I'd like to think this way instead. Like it's basically that type of thing. And so it's like, how do we bridge that gap? Because like when we feel good about it, when we have motivation, which is a different topic too, we don't need discipline.
Right.
Because we have motivation to get us over the hump. Discipline is that specific actionable over that hump, where willpower, when we're depleted on willpower, it's harder to do that. Can we still do it if we're depleted in willpower? Yes, we can, but it might take more in terms of like mindset. It might take more in terms of, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like they're intimately connected, but there's subtle distinctions amongst all of those things.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say is that when you're talking about discipline, you're talking about consistency in behavior.
Well, I'm talking about the practicing into the new habit. So yeah, not perfection, obviously, like, because obviously in building a new habit, we're very likely to falter many times. And that's the thing too, is I think people get wrapped up into this mindset that if I want to make a habit, if I have an insight, I should automatically be awesome at this new thing. If I realize I should feel positive about life or something like that, I should always feel positive about life. And if I don't, I'm fucking it up or I'm failing, when really it's just that iteration. How do we get more iterations of the new thing? And determining those actions and then executing those actions multiple times via our discipline.
Sure. So one absolutely like actionable like tip around that is embracing the process, right? Like
Definitely.
embracing the process. And if that's not like a mantra that you guys are currently using, like just like get a temporary tattoo on your arm, like, and I'm like literally like embrace the process. And the process is supposed to be and will be messy in the beginning. Like the typical like process starts as like unbearable. Like the beginning, like when you first implement you're trying to do a new habit, like maybe you're trying to meditate every day, maybe you're trying to exercise every day, maybe you're trying to, eat whole foods, and in the beginning it is unbearable. And then after a while, sticking with it, it becomes uncomfortable. Yeah. And then after a while it becomes, you're unstoppable. Like that's like the trajectory. But at any given moment, given moment, it's like fall down, get back up, like that whole like get back that.
Yeah.
Like embracing the process is definitely like an actionable kind of tip, aka mantra. Like that mindset is huge when it comes to discipline, I'd say.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I really feel like in all of the content I've consumed and the things that I've created, the things that I've experienced, it seems like, in this just hold true, that discipline is one of the key separators of people who accept a certain level of success. And I say success with air quotes, meaning it's defined by each of us. And those who achieve more exceptional results in their life, whether it's in themselves, whether it's in their work, whether it's whatever, that is what separates, because it is difficult. You know what I mean? It does take more to get over that, like to work hard through that period where we don't want to do something.
Well, and I mean, the research on willpower again, and I think it's semantics in some ways, like the way that you are talking about it and looking at it, but the research on willpower, which I think goes hand in hand with discipline, however we want to like separate it out. But literally the research is that willpower is a higher predictor of academic success than IQ.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a higher predictor of leadership than charisma. Bliss.
Oh wait, Pam, say that again.
If I got stuck.
Yeah, say that again because it sounds good. So willpower is a higher predictor of...
So willpower is a higher predictor of academic success.
Yes, correct.
Than IQ.
Mm-hmm.
Willpower is a higher predictor of leadership than charisma. Yep. And it's a higher predictor of marital bliss than empathy.
Yeah. Wow.
Like that's what the research. Wow. That's what the research shows.
Cool.
And so they literally say that it's the queen of all virtues, that it's like literally health, happiness, love, and wealth. Like if you can increase your discipline, willpower, right, that you will achieve so much more in life.
And that's a daunting thing to think about. If I am imagining someone sitting here watching us talking about this and imagining whatever perceived success they feel we have in our careers or lives or whatever. And like, cause you know how it is, you look at someone that you admire. Like when I look at Marie Forleo or Elizabeth Gilbert or Brene Brown, I look at them and I go, oh wow. Like, it's not that I compare in a negative way, but I really admire them. Yeah. And I'm witnessing and looking at their success. And that's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing. There's nothing bad. There's no but about this. I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone that might be watching this and going, oh, yeah, but you know what I mean? like, yeah, but those things, it's like, oh, those are the exact, it's like, oh, I feel like I've lost my train of thought, but like there's something about once you're there that it's easy to like talk about, but really like if I try to think about a story where I've had to employ discipline and employ my willpower, or like, you know, really generate willpower such, because I do distinguish the two. It's hard for me to interchange discipline and willpower. Like the language doesn't, it feels like almost inauthentic to me to say them in the same
do what you
that like to like generate my willpower such that I can employ my discipline is that, because I feel like willpower is what I feel inside myself, whereas discipline is the action.
And I think that's so important. And I think it makes perfect sense why you and I are kind of coming at this in a slightly, like, I'm all about being like a human being, like how am I being and how is my being impacting my doing?
Yes.
Whereas you are very focused on doing, which is a beautiful thing. And where I think most humans are. As
avenue to what we want, like only because I see so much of this, so much cycling, so much mental this.
And all I'll say is the root of everything that we do, the root of that is how we're being.
Yes, absolutely.
Just to, because so much of the time we're not connecting with how we're being.
Definitely.
We're just focused and stuck on what we're doing.
Yes.
And we miss the important shit.
So agree.
And so it's cool. It's so cool because it's powerful to start to separate these out. And I think that there's so much potential in this conversation because when I like the research around how do you improve discipline is you improve willpower. And how do you improve willpower? And a lot of it is mindfulness. A lot of it is like meditation and breathing and exercise.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, you want to get better at discipline? The way that you really freaking get better at discipline is willpower and establishing habits, right? Both. Because the number one thing, how do you improve willpower is you start establishing habits so you don't have to use your willpower so much. You just keep piling on the habits that you want. And then you don't need to use as much willpower each moment to like stay on track,
which is
to make it automatic,
which is achieved through discipline. Like how do you build habits?
Or it achieves discipline. So it's like a chicken and an egg thing.
I don't follow that.
It's so interesting. So to me, it's like a chicken and the egg thing.
But tell me more what you mean, because that doesn't as much resonate with me.
So fascinating. So to me, discipline is doing what you say you're going to do. If you say to yourself, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to do it every day, I'm going to, whatever it is that you set out to do, like you plan and you pre-commit, which I think is your point. This is the first thing you need to do to have discipline is to be aware of a plan, right? Is that what the first thing? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yes. To be aware of a change you want to make or a habit you want to learn or you want to grow into. Yes.
Okay. So if you want to then be able to do that and do what you say you're going to do, right? To have that discipline around whatever, you know, whether it's your core values, whether it's new habits you want to put in, whatever the discipline is. Yeah. Discipline could be anything, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. Then there's I think another subtle distinction about this word.
Okay, cool.
Because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like what you're saying is there's a discipline that is an achieved thing. Is that what you mean?
It's a way of acting, a discipline to stay on track.
Yes, exactly. So like that's something. Yeah. Okay. There's a subtle distinction in terms of how I'm using the word is that like, I'm using it as almost an energy, not like it's the action, but anyway, do you see what I'm saying?
Is it like staying on track? Use other words, like use other phrases.
Yeah. Well, it's such a subtle distinction, I feel like, but it's like I have a discipline to do this, right? Like they say, for example, in skydiving, there are different ways of flying and they say, okay, doing vertical flying, that's a discipline in skydiving. So that's a thing that is done in skydiving, right? But what I'm talking about is the actual like phenomenon of getting over, I'm talking very specifically about the getting over that hump of where we have not achieved something to where we have achieved something in terms of habit, in terms of a change being affected in our lives, right? So if it's, for example, you know, building a habit around eating healthy food and you don't want to eat the candy bar, is like the discipline of how do we not eat the candy bar when we're so used to eating the candy bar?
Yeah.
All we ever used to do is eat the candy bar. And now I'm like, you want me to eat fucking broccoli? How do I do that?
Yeah.
Like, how do I just stop? I mean, maybe that's a bad example. I don't know. But it could be going to the gym. Like, how do I get out the door? You know, how do I actually get there? You know what I'm saying? So that's a little different than having mastery in the discipline of like.
Yeah. And that's not how I'm not using it as like an expertise. I'm using it as, see, to me, it's interesting because everything you just described to me is willpower to stay on track, to, you know, be consistent, to achieve your goal, to achieve that greatness. You have to be consistent. You have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to kind of set the plan and then actually show up and do it. Like, you know, practice makes progress. So if you're like, if I want to learn to play guitar, I have to have the discipline to practice every day.
Right.
I mean, or I have to have the discipline to practice. And then, okay, how do you make it a daily habit? I mean, there's so much, you know, we could dive into on this, but like making something a habit is kind of a fundamental way to have discipline around it, because it's like, then you do it without thinking. And so you don't have to use the willpower to be able to then execute it and have that discipline. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I just think we're using a subtly different language, but keep going. And we'll just recognize that. I think it's useful because there's probably people out there that look at it the way I do. And there's probably people that look at it and think about it the way you do. And that's great. I mean, we're talking about the same things that are useful for people, you know, like, cause we're talking about things that are useful for people to make change, to build new habits. How do they grow into their excellence and their full potential and all those buzzwords? But like, really, that's the question, right? Like if someone's watching this and going, what's useful about this for me? I don't know. It's because I'm in some thing that I want to make a change. So if I think about some place where I've had to use willpower and discipline, I think about my emotional journey, for example, which sounds it's hard to even talk about in terms of like goal setting and habit. But I've found like just to learn emotional skills, like to be able to, and again, it's almost even difficult to even share about, but like to care for myself emotionally and not like need so much from other people. Like that was definitely something I wanted and had as a goal for myself. And so like when I found myself feeling maybe low or lonely or needing some more, and it's not that you want to never need other people. It's not that either. There's a balance, of course, but in terms of the skill set of self like comforting and self love, for example, because that's another thing that's so buzzwordy of like, oh, you just got to love yourself, right? And I believe that's 100% true. You do. And it's like, so what does that look like for me? Like taking that on as a goal, and recognizing that I didn't have the mastery that I wanted in the realm of self-love. I was like, okay, how can I instill this habit? Well, when I recognize that I'm feeling lonely or less than, my gremlins coming up, whatever, triggered for any reason emotionally, like what can I do? I can, do X, Y. I can watch some really great content on YouTube and fill my mind with good, positive thoughts, feel like I'm making progress, read a thing. I can call a friend, but that's again, balance. I can go for a run, get some endorphins into my body, care about that Maslow's hierarchy, the physiology first. And then, anyway, you see what I'm saying? Like, so I had all those things that I could use as things to build the discipline around my own self-care. Does that make sense?
Totally. It makes perfect sense. I mean, it's a great example. And one of the recommendations, like, again, I love it because there's so much research. It's not like I didn't have to come up with this on my own, but like one of the recommendations is to identify a keystone habit, right? Like if you look at your life and be like, okay, if there was one thing that I can identify that impacts everything. So like the keystone, you know, the whole, like the one stone that without it, the whole thing falls down. So like,
Yep.
what would be your keystone habit? And the hierarchy of needs is a really good thing to kind of reference here, because the foundation for kind of all of our achieving greatness and all the things that we want to kind of achieve in our life, you know, our physiological fundamentals are the foundation for it. So like if we're not solid on our health, it's going to be like really, really hard to achieve anything. You know how it is when you're sick, you can't be writing and like you can't be doing any of the things that are they're going to kind of achieve greatness. So if someone, you know, doesn't have their kind of physiological fundamentals nailed, and that to me is sleep, eating healthy food, exercising, and then mental health, I include in the basis of that. So that is all the kind of self-care stuff. That is a really, really important place to look as a keystone habit and identify, okay, self-care will be my keystone habit. And then be like, okay, then you break that down. Be like, what are the parts of that that I need to start shifting? And it may be too much for most people, it's too much to tackle, you know, food, sleep, exercise, and like mental health all in one fell swoop. So you pick one and you work on that and you nail that. And again, there's so much research. It's like, all right, pick your habit. You make it daily. You make it easy. You're like, all right, if you currently eat like crap, you don't want to suddenly say my goal is to not eat any of that and eat all, you go easy on yourself so you can make it achievable.
Well, and that's the thing about willpower is, and there's a specific article actually that I read. I'll share it with this video, but where we only have a certain amount of willpower. We can't, you know, like before we have to regenerate it, before we have to refill our own tank. You know what I mean? So we only have so much willpower.
Any given day. And there's things we can do to practice to increase that over time, but any given day.
Sure. Yeah. That's why taking on everything and like going like way too large in terms of the disparity between where we are now and where we'd like to be, like without inching forward, that sets us up for failure. It totally, and there's like, that's the thing. It's a like proven thing basically that like, anyway, you know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's cool because there's so much research around this that you and I don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel around kind of sharing strategies and tips that people can be doing. And for me, my biggest thing for me was around my food, because after I was always a really kind of lousy eater. I grew up on a farm, so I had a lot of natural food to eat, but I also ate a lot of processed crap. During kind of my high school and college years, I was really proud of the fact, proud that 2 meals a day would be a bacon double cheeseburger from Burger King. Like literally 2 meals a day. And I was volleyball player, active, so I could somehow eat like that and stay trim-ish. And then I literally just kind of continued to eat crap until after I had Jessie, my second kiddo. And then my metabolism went down a lot. And for the first time, I actually focused on my diet. And I use the word diet as what we eat, not going on a diet.
Right.
But I focused on my diet, and I was a microbiology and biochem major at Yale. So I have a lot of kind of hard science knowledge. And somehow I just decided that didn't apply to my body, that my body didn't need all those nutrients, and it was fine. But when I started eating less crap, but still I ate the same crap, just less of it, because I wanted to lose weight and I was bruising and my energy was shot. Then I started researching nutrition and I got educated about how I wanted to be eating. And then I had to make the change. And for me, I think everybody, like we've said, has a different amount of willpower. I think that I was born naturally, or something happened when I was a kid growing up on a farm. I don't know, but I think I probably have more willpower naturally. And it's easier for me to say, you know what, I want to get over there. I'm just going to do it. And so for me, switching my diet, it didn't take as much, but I did all the things that I know are effective, like monitoring, like keeping track, holding yourself accountable, super, super important.
Yeah.
Regulating when you eat. So you have a plan that you're only going to eat at mealtime and not in between. Super effective. Like there are things, strategies, again, research shows if you want to make a change, I'm certain whatever it is that anyone wants to make a change on, there's tons of research around the most effective way to make the change.
Yeah.
And I kind of got lucky that I did that. But again, it's like that discipline. How do you find it?
Yeah.
And knowing why, like knowing your why do you want to make the change? That's a huge thing.
Exactly what I was going to jump onto. Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Honestly,
I mean,
that's
yeah.
what, because that's the thing. Like I listen to The Art of Charm. It's a podcast all the time. It's my favorite one. I say it every time practically.
Yeah.
But there was an episode recently, the best episode I've heard in a while, with a guy called Mark Devine. He's a Navy SEAL. And that's the thing. And
I love him.
Yeah, like, and the Navy SEAL parallel or analogy is awesome because holy shit, right? I've never been through Hell Week. You know what I mean? So it's like, even imagining, I know the things that I've done that I can say that I feel like I've achieved that required discipline for me to have achieved, you know, like I know, like I have those things. So anyway, when he was talking about that, it's such a crucial point to know why you're doing something, because if you really don't have that baseline mindset dialed and clear, it's so easy to lose motivation. And I say motivation, but I don't really mean that, like to lose commitment to the follow through. And that's the thing, the follow through is huge. Like it could be even for like spiritual practice. This doesn't have to be like I'm skydiving team training, you know, which is an example of something in my life that required much discipline. Like, yeah, okay, I love skydiving, but shit, some of those days were extremely difficult. You know, sometimes we got in huge, giant team fights and we had to figure out how to learn to navigate conflict. All of that was part of the bigger discipline toward seeing the team through to the end competition and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like tons of teams implode and blow up and don't make it because they're not actually having that baseline commitment and discipline through the hard parts. So anyway.
Yeah. And to me, I think that's two important things you just said. One, knowing your why, like why is it that I'm doing this? Be really, really clear on that. And two, be 100% committed. There's like a saying, like 99%'s a bitch, 100% is like something like that, where like, if you have like a 99% commitment to something, you're screwed. Like honestly, like you're setting yourself up to quit, to fail, to say, you know what, fuck it.
Love it.
Going into anything with 100% commitment.
Love it.
Research shows, like it's not, I didn't just make this up again. I'm brilliant and everything, but research shows, I think this was in McGonagall's book, but like 100% commitment. Are you going to be 100%? Of course not. Of course not.
Yeah.
But having that mindset of I'm 100% committed to this is the difference between success and failure.
And what that, absolutely. And what that points to, which is so also super useful in this type of stuff too, is the detachment from the specificity of how something comes to pass.
Exactly.
Period. The fucking end. If you fail, again, I use air quotes, it just doesn't exist. Failure does not exist.
It may take 282 times. It may take 282 tries.
It's just iteration. It's just education and experience and iteration, repetition of the thing we are practicing to be masterful at. Period. Like it's all there for the taking. It really is. And that's the thing, is like that alone, that mindset alone. And like, that's the thing. I encourage people to look at what mindset do they hold? Sorry, I have a hair in my mouth. Haha. And like, what mindset do they hold? And like, for me, it's like capability. I think I've mentioned this before. Like, I feel like I may not know how to do something, but I feel like I'm, as a just person, I'm capable of learning anything. I feel like that we all have this sort of infinite and like really all have the capacity to learn anything. And so that's the thing. Like, I know I can do it, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, you may never be the best at it, but you can do it.
Yeah. And it's like, I also have a high value for life experience. So I'm not that daunted by failure per se. Like, I'm like almost excited at the whole learning process. So that's why when I take on a new goal, I'm anxious. Like, I get some nerves around it. I have some attachment to outcome, but I'm more attached to and more enlivened by the idea that I'm having a new life experience. Does that make sense? So that
Totally.
supports me as well to feel less stress around perfection and certain types, like certain level of execution at the onset.
Yeah. And I think that it touches, and we talk so often about core values and knowing your core values. But one of my core values is resourcefulness, because that concept that I can find ways to solve anything. Like I am resourceful. And I say this to my kids all the time, like, we're not entitled to anything. We are resourceful. We're going to figure it out. You can find answers. You can find solutions. You can find help. You can find ways to continue to move forward in the face of challenge after challenge after challenge.
Love it.
And that core value keeps me in line with this moving forward kind of process.
And it supports, and it absolutely makes it not daunting for one to say, I'm 100% committed. If you have a high value and a high belief of yourself and others in resourcefulness, it's no problem to say I'm 100% committed. Why? Because I'm resourceful as all get out. I got this. You know what I mean? That's so interesting. That's the place to look at. For people.
And the other thing that's really helpful is to have bright lines around things that you are not under any circumstances, going to cross. So like it's really clear, like if you say your diet, for example, is something that is a goal, that you want to eat healthy, establish some bright lines around, well, no matter what, I may not eat like a rock star all day, but no matter what, I am not going to eat fast food, or I'm not going to eat fried food. Like, have some bright lines that kind of enable you to continue to move in the right direction. And it's really great around daily habits, because again, we keep saying daily habits, but if you set up a daily habit where it's a bright line, like no matter what, I'm going to exercise in some shape or form every day, unless I'm sick, but no matter what, bright line, like there's not a day where I'm not going to get some form of exercise, even if it just means I do 20 minutes on the floor of a hotel room, do some yoga, do some, body weight stuff, like no matter what, or I'm going to walk with my kids, 18 miles through a freaking amusement park, like whatever it is, like no matter what, there's a bright line for me. And it's a bright line for me around meditation. And some days I end up getting thwarted because my kids wake up and it's chaos and I'm in a hotel room and I can't sit quietly for 20 minutes. Then I do walking meditations. Then I do something else to give myself, and I have a bright line around daily meditation.
It's like those gutter bumpers in bowling.
Yep, exactly.
But you won't go in the gutters if you have those bumpers up. What are the bumpers? That's so useful. That's the thing. There's like the idea of removing temptation also sort of as the like almost the mirror, but similar to that, like putting up the bumpers. Like if we find ourselves breaking down in a certain way over and over again, like if it's like salt and vinegar chips, fucking love them, right? But I had to basically, and again, I had to put a bumper up around salt and vinegar chips. I know that sounds so stupid, but like that's sort of an entry point for me into slippery slopeness. So like if I allow myself to eat the salt and vinegar chips, it sort of represents for me an off the wagon situation. You know what I mean? Which sounds strange, but like I can eat other sort of stuff that feel like a reward or a cheat or whatever around eating. But there are certain things that are those hard lines, that are those bumpers where I'm like, I'm going to just remove this temptation entirely because I believe and feel and know that supports me, at least currently, in my goal toward this type of health that I'm working to have.
Yeah. And just to plant the seed around food, if we can focus on how the food makes us feel, like how do we feel when we eat the food, as opposed to how do we feel when we think about the food?
Yes.
And we shift, and I'm actually doing a new program I'm going to tell you about sometime.
Great.
That's what I'm doing currently. And now I don't even crave, I look at the chips and I'm like, that looks actually disgusting. Like, because I'm connected with how the food makes me feel. And I've shifted my mindset, and I don't allow the mindset of how do I feel with the idea of it, or how do I feel the second it touches my tongue. That's not how I connect with food anymore. And it's so powerful, because now I don't crave stuff. It is like, game changing. So we could talk about that sometime.
Well, and you know what I love about that? Thank you for sharing that. That's so awesome. Maybe it was you who told me that. So I feel like somebody else mentioned that, or you mentioned that to me the other day. I can't remember, but I love that concept because it's legit. And I would imagine you making that change of your mindset of how you relate to food, that probably required a bit of discipline or willpower, execution that is different, right? Because that's a new way to approach it. Like, how did that look?
And the cool thing, Mel, is because of my meditation practice, that unlocks even more willpower in every area of my life.
Cool.
Like the number one thing that science shows will help build willpower, which then helps with discipline, is meditation. Like that's the number one thing, because you're literally, science shows that you're increasing your pathways in your prefrontal cortex. And that is the part of your brain that enables the kind of higher level thinking.
Love it.
So you're literally paving more neurons so you can spend more time in your prefrontal cortex.
Beautiful.
And less time in your lower brain where you're like the reactive reptilian, right? So, because I have such a strong meditation practice, and actually in this program, the first thing you do the first week, you don't even change anything you eat. He just is having you do breathing exercises and drink more water, because he's trying to get you to be more mindful.
Yeah.
Because having that prefrontal cortex activity makes it so much easier to make changes in all areas of your life.
Yep.
So whether it's food, whether it's exercise, whether it's keeping your house clean, because literally being tidy is another indicator that makes it easier for us to have discipline and willpower. It's like, but it's true. Like science shows that if we keep our house clean, if we keep our desk neat, we will have more willpower, more discipline.
So awesome.
And it seems like chicken and the egg, but it's research shows it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because meditation has always been a thing for me. Like I've always had interest in it, and also really like not don't feel like I've found my, like, and not necessarily that I need a way, because I feel like I definitely meditate. It's not that I never meditate. Like I do breathing meditate. I walk mindfully. I have a high level of mindfulness, I feel like, in general. But the concept of meditation where we sit and be silent and this and that version. So check it out. My roommate the other day, Sarah, she's amazing and wonderful. Just loves, beautiful, bright light, loves humanity. She and her friends, and I'm here in LA. She was out in New York, and she was like, hey, do you want to be a part of, we're doing a meditation for the Hurricane Harvey, victims. Would you like to join us? It's going to be at this time. And I was like, yeah, I would love that. Thank you for asking. Just sort of this collective coming together of minds and energies and love. And it was extremely easy for me to do that. So I'm asking you, as someone I believe has more mastery in this particular area than I do, does that type of meditation serve the same as what you were just talking about of opening the prefrontal cortex and all that stuff? Like, does that style of meditation, is there some distinction as to what you're talking about?
What did you do when you sat?
I just sat there and I sent love, and I just put myself over there and like was in their experience as I could imagine it, and just basically just imagined myself as like a bright light and love touching them all. It was beautiful. Yeah.
So yes, that absolutely, whenever the first step, right, is drawing your attention inward. So you're bringing your attention inward as opposed to, what you see, what you hear, whatever. So you're going inside of yourself, and then you're focusing your attention on something.
Cool.
So that's what you did, right? That absolutely is a beautiful, effective meditation.
Yeah. I think I just, and this is like, I guess, a part of my, it's not that I have the firm 100% commitment yet. I don't have full clarity around my meditation. We've talked about this in other calls, but like, I ask about it deliberately as a version of, like, if we're talking about discipline or execution of a goal or making a change, that's something that I have on my radar. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
well,
okay. Anyway.
It makes me think of recommending a particular teacher to you. Her name is Pam Chodron. I'm not sure of how you pronounce her last name,
Cool.
but she has a lot of kind of loving kindness meditations where there's different versions of it. But like you breathe in, everyone's suffering, and you breathe out love to them. And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's a beautiful meditation. And I know we've talked about this before, but the first step is just going inward and focusing your attention on something and
Yeah.
keeping your attention focused on something. So that's the first step. And that is literally just by keeping your attention focused on one thing
Mm-hmm.
and not allowing
Yeah.
it to go and being inward.
Yeah.
That is the first step. And that may be where someone is at their entire lifetime with meditation. And it's fine. It's great.
Yeah.
You know,
Cool. Well, I'm going to look at my notes before we get off because I want to make sure I covered everything. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to make sure you mention?
I mean, I made a list of things that, I just to go through like actionable tips to build this, like to get stronger.
Yeah.
First of all, just knowing that you can get stronger in this area,
Yes.
that you may be at this place where like, I kind of suck at this. Like I suck at being disciplined. I suck at like holding myself to what I say I'm going to do or whatever. Like you may suck at that, and that's okay. Wherever you are is where you are, and you can get better with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Practice makes progress, and you may be someone who really struggles with willpower, struggles with discipline. And with practice, you can get better at it. So, there's some like meditation, breathing exercises, breathing in, even breaths in and out like that. Research shows builds discipline, builds willpower. Exercise, it is incredibly effective at building willpower. So people who exercise during the course of the day versus people who don't exercise during the course of the day, people who exercise will show more willpower, which will help them have more discipline throughout the day. Being nice to yourself, we talked about that ad nauseum, but also being relatively consistent, like, lowering the kind of variability of your behavior. Like suppose going to bed, getting 8 hours of sleep is one of the things that is on your list to have more discipline around. Moving in the right direction where you don't allow there to be like one day where you get 2 hours of sleep and then 10 hours, like just lowering the variability will make it easier to have willpower, discipline. We talked about cleaning up. We talked, the other thing is being, keeping your nutrition on point. So your glucose levels are steady. That is another thing that research shows we have much harder time having discipline when our blood sugar is all over the place. Like there's been research and it's locked and loaded in research. So keep yourself properly nourished so your blood sugar isn't bouncing around.
100%.
And it'll be easier for you to be successful.
Cool. Well, I'm going to say my list, which is a lot of what you said, because why not? It's awesome to, I think, reiterate these sort of more bite-sized stuff. I mentioned removing temptation, like really setting ourselves up for success, like recognizing those more powerful breakdown points for ourselves and setting up our lives. Like you mentioned, I think, I forget what you said. It doesn't matter, but removing that temptation and sort of setting ourselves up for success in a specific way, getting the bad food out of the house if that's a difficult thing for you. And going to the Maslow's hierarchy, you mentioned that, like physiology, getting enough sleep, like that's so the baseline. The emotional health, it's so the baseline. Like it's so much more difficult to make a change, to employ discipline when we are not physically strong and we're not rested, when we are not feeling loved and taken care of. Like it's just so much more difficult. So that's another huge part of setting ourselves up for success for building discipline. The reminder of it's not going to feel right, quote unquote. It's not going to feel right because you're so used to doing it the other way. It's just not going to feel the same because we have all this practice in doing something some other way. So there will be this sort of internal dissonance until we get to that point that you said, Pam, about what was it? It was
unstoppable.
Unstoppable. That's what it was.
Like unbearable, uncomfortable, unstoppable.
That's right.
No one can stop me from meditating now. Like I'm at the place. In the beginning, meditation was quite unbearable. It was incredibly unbearable, and now it's uncomfortable. And now my meditation is unstoppable. Like there's not, you couldn't pay me to not meditate. And that's the progression.
Yes, I love that. I love that. I also put down like mindfully giving ourselves breaks, mindfully giving ourselves rewards, but not the rewards that are like going to send us down the kind of path. Like I used to reward myself with like going to the movies, for example. Like I would rock out something, and like going to the movies was a reward, and I really liked that, but I couldn't go. It was sort of a deadline to like, oh, I'll make this show. I don't really do this honestly anymore, but it's something I used
It's
to
a
do
process, yeah.
that used to really work for me. Like it was something that just got me moving and doing the things and growing and whatever. So it's just something that helped.
Yeah, rewards are great. I mean, rewarding ourselves, there's a lot of research around how effective that is to get us to change our behavior.
Yeah. And I say mindfully because it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to use that as a loophole to kind of going backwards.
Undo, yeah.
So that's not what I mean. And this is the thing that we didn't mention, but we alluded to, is the forgiving ourselves when we fail, because there's so much potential judgment when we're undoing the perception that we have to be perfect, instead of being in this learning process, in this experiential growth process. So like, if you are undoing that sort of perfectionist mindset around having a goal or building a new habit or making a change, and you're more attached to it in terms of wanting it to be instantaneous or wanting it to happen sooner than it is, forgive yourself as you screw up along the way and you are in the growth process, because that will support you to start again and start again and start again to get all those iterations and repetition that we need to actually get to the unstoppable, masterful place.
Yeah. And research shows too, depending on the habit or what you're trying to change, it could be 20 days. It could be 250 days. Like that's the research. So it totally depends on a lot of different stuff. So just be gentle with yourself, going back to being nice to yourself. That will help you as you go through this process, and it's going to be how it's going to be. And as long as you have that 100% commitment, you'll get there eventually.
It's so funny, the balance of like ferocity and gentleness. It's like the comedy that I see in the required balance of everything. It's just like, the more that I do this work, the more I'm like, okay, there's balance all the time. But like, this is a great example of like needing that sort of, and I say ferocity, like this intensity of this 100% commitment and this gentleness inside of that 100% commitment.
Do you know that Martin Luther King quote, mind like a snake, heart like a dove?
Oh, love it.
That's one of my favorite quotes. I think I was really young when I discovered it. And I was like, yes, that like mind like a motherfucking snake, like so intense. And then heart like a dove. Like, it's like, that's the balance. And that's why we want to use our mind as this awesome tool to be of service to us. But this gentle heart is just,
yeah. Oh, that is the perfect place to end. Amazing.
Namaste.
Love.
I love you.
Ah.
All right. melaniecurtis.com. Anytime.
goldevolution.com, wherever you are recording.
Yep. Share this to give us feedback. Any comments, if there's like one thing, if you can comment what the one thing that like really stuck with you from this, please share that in the comments. We really appreciate it. And any questions, feedback, always.
Yes, totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you.
This has gotta be good life. This has gotta be